Hi, I'm Shashank Bhargava, and you're listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. In this episode, we talk about a medical trial in which all the participants were cured of cancer. We also talk about how the manner in which someone walks can be used in a criminal trial. But first, we talk about a case of sexual harassment. A top Indian cyclist has accused the chief national team coach RK Sharma of allegedly forcing himself into her room and asking her to sleep with him during a training camp in Slovenia last month. Indian Express's Mihir Vasavda, who reported on the story, joins us to give us more details. Mihir, when exactly did this alleged incident take place, and what does the cyclist say happened?
It has taken place over a multiple number of days. It isn't a one-off incident, Shashank. Between May 15th, when the Indian cycling team, the sprint team, when they left for Slovenia to prepare for the Asian Championship, it started from around that time. The girl in her complaint has alleged that it started 3 days before the team was supposed to leave, and it continued for the rest of the month. And there were multiple incidents where the coach, RK Sharma, he has allegedly made derogatory remarks, sexual comments, which made the girl afraid. She basically says that she feared for her life, or she felt humiliated. And it reached a stage where she says that his sexual overtones and his comments, she couldn't take them any longer. And then on June 3rd, she decided to leave the training camp in Slovenia and return to India.
Yeah, and one of the things she mentions in her complaint is that even before she reached Slovenia, she found out that she would have to share her hotel room with the chief national team coach, right?
Absolutely. So on 15th, she was supposed to leave for Slovenia, and 3 days before the 15th of May, she received a call from the coach. The coach said that there were some logistical problems and she would have to share a room with the coach. Generally, what happens is all these athletes, all the cyclists, they share rooms with one another. But in this particular case, the cyclist was the only woman in the team. And the coach said that they didn't have enough rooms and she would have to share the room with her. The girl said that she was shocked. She did not know how to respond to it. And she also kind of entered an extreme state of panic and anxiousness. These are her words, which led her to various problems. I mean, she couldn't sleep properly, so she consulted the sports psychologist attached to the team. But despite all this, she says that she decided to go to Slovenia for two reasons. I mean, first, she did not want to lose an opportunity to train abroad. And then she thought after reaching Slovenia, she would figure out a way and get some alternate arrangements made.
Yeah, and we now know that when she reached Slovenia, an alternative accommodation was not available for her. What happened after that?
So she arrived at her hotel in Slovenia on May 16th. And like you mentioned, they weren't immediately able to arrange a separate room. So the coach, in a very rude and a dismissive manner, she says in a complaint, the coach asked her to stay with her. She did that because there was no other option immediately. But that's when the team's physiotherapist, he intervened, and this issue was brought to the attention of the Sports Authority of India. Now, the Sports Authority of India is responsible for all the accommodation, all the travel arrangements for the teams. And they immediately organized another room for her. Now this, the girl says, that incensed the coach further.
And what exactly does he do after that? After he's angry that she can't share the same room with him?
So what he basically did is started to ignore her during training, made threatening comments. He basically said that she will be removed from the Cycling National Center of Excellence in Delhi, and quote unquote, he will make sure that I sell vegetables on the road. The girl then said that put her in an extreme state of mental agony, shock and fear, which she continues to feel till this very moment. And Shashank, it did not end there. So what happened a couple of days later, in fact, was that some members of the team at least were supposed to travel from Slovenia to Germany for a competition. And the girl says that she was supposed to be a part of that traveling contingent. However, the coach, RK Sharma, He told the girl that, look, since you're uncomfortable to share a room with me, you should not come along because there are no extra rooms available in Germany as well. So while the rest of the team traveled to Germany, the girl stayed back in Slovenia. And the worst incident, the girl says, happened once the team returned from Germany. On May 29th, she says, the coach returned from Germany at around 7 a.m. local time and knocked on her door. He forced himself inside, laid on her bed, asked her to come and sleep next to her and behave like his wife. This is all based on a complaint that the girl has filed with the Sports Authority of India. After this moment, the girl said that she could not stay at the camp any longer and decided to leave. This was then relayed to the Sports Authority of India back in Delhi, and they on June 3rd booked her a return flight. And this also actually incensed the coach further because the girl says that after realizing that she was returning, the coach called her family and basically said that you should get your daughter married because she has no future in cycling.
Yeah, so based on this complaint, it seems that the coach is constantly targeting and harassing her. Even before she reached Slovenia, while they were there, and then later the harassment continued when he called her family up. But could you talk about what action the Sports Authority of India, SAI, has taken since the complaint was filed?
So, SAI, as we speak, Shashank, on the morning of Wednesday, they have immediately asked the coach to return from Slovenia. That's the latest report right now. They have also formed a committee to look into these allegations. At the same time, the Cycling Federation of India have also formed a separate committee, and they're both looking into the allegations and investigating them.
And Mihir, in the recent past as well, we have seen a number of female athletes complain about such behavior to the Sports Authority of India. Could you talk a bit about such previous instances?
Yeah, so in January 2020, we had in fact done an investigation on this subject, and based on that, we found that in the 10 years up to January 2020, SAI had received 45 complaints of sexual harassment, and out of those, 29 were against coaches. The complaints were of varying nature, from sexual harassment to physical torture. And in a lot of cases, we found that the accused were let off very leniently, either with a small cut in pay or pension, or they were transferred to other centers. In most cases, like we found that in almost a dozen cases, the investigation dragged for years and without any resolution.
And since this investigation came out, has SAI made any changes in the organization in terms of sensitizing coaches or ensuring that these cases are handled in a better way?
They had said it would happen. Kiran Rijiju, I think, was the sports minister back then, and they said they would sensitize coaches. There was a parliamentary committee report as well on the same, in which the panel had suggested that the coaches and athletes, everyone who work at SAI centers and in the sports industry should be made aware of their behavior, sensitized about these issues. Whether it has been implemented on ground, we don't know. SAI tried to expedite the pending cases of sexual harassment and come to a resolution, which based on our report, they did. Again, it isn't clear whether all those complaints SAI received in the last 10 years, whether they have been addressed and a resolution has reached in them.
And next we talk about a new experimental cancer drug. In a small medical trial that was conducted in the US, 18 patients who were suffering from rectal cancer were given a new drug. And after the trial was completed, to the surprise of everyone involved, the cancer disappeared in every single patient. And experts say that this is the first time this has ever happened in a trial. In this segment, we speak to Anonna Dutt, who reports on Health for the paper about the results of this unprecedented trial. Anonna, experts have been astonished by the result of this trial. How big of a deal is this?
So the big deal that was shown in the study is that all 12 participants whose data has been included, all of them recovered without any surgery, without any chemo or radiotherapy. It's just with this immune therapy they were able to recover. And that kind of unheard of. Like anyway, 100% trial is very rare. And even in that, like for cancer, you usually have various complications. You need different kinds of treatments for different people. But what the authors of this study were able to show that just with this immunotherapy, which was given for a 6-month period to these selected individuals, like their tumors were gone. So that's kind of a big deal.
Right. Now, one caveat is that this was a very small trial. We are only talking about 18 patients and only those who were suffering from rectal cancer. But do we know at what stage of cancer these patients were at?
So, first of all, the study includes the data of only 12 of the patients who have completed 6 months after their treatment. So, the follow-up period that they're looking at is 6 months to 25 months, I think, in these patients. So, all of these 12 people have recovered. But what is important to see is that they have selected the patients very carefully. All these patients are in either stage 2 or stage 3 of rectal cancer, and it is not metastasized, which means it's only located as a tumor in the rectal region. It's not spread to any other part of the body. So, that is important. And another important distinction is that this is not all rectal cancer patients. It's a very small subset of rectal cancer patients who have something called the mismatch repair deficiency. And this mismatch repair deficiency is there in many other cancers as well, but most commonly in colorectal cancers.
And could you explain how this drug works and how it managed to cure this type of cancer?
So what happens in the body's normal process is that the cells copy the DNA from each other and grow. But when this copying action is happening, there are also sometimes mutations that come in the process. And there is a body's mechanism of correcting these typos, so to say. In patients with this type of cancer, that there is a deficiency and they're not able to correct it, and hence the cancer cells keep growing. Now, what this particular drug, immunotherapy, does, it's called PD-1 blockade. And there are other drugs also available which are in use for different types of cancers. But of course, so far, along with surgery, chemotherapy, etc., it's not been used only alone for the treatment of any cancer so far. But what the PD-1 essentially does is, if you imagine your body's T cells to be a car, PD-1 is like the brake for them. So when we give these PD-1 blockades, it releases the brake and it makes your T cells primed to destroy the cancer cells. And that's how the body basically fights off its own cancerous mutation. But even among patients with rectal cancer, this is a very small proportion, probably about 5 to 10% of the cases.
And you mentioned T cells earlier, and I just want to mention this for those who may not know. But T cells are a type of white blood cells and are part of our immune system. But talking about these people in the trial who got cured of cancer, essentially, do we know whether they experienced any side effects because of this drug?
So no, that's another thing. They did not really have any significant side effects, which is something which has also been seen with other PD-1 drugs. So that's something that is already in use in India. Not the one that's included in this trial, but there are other PD-1 blockade drugs which have been used in India. And from what I hear from oncologists, they say that it gives much less side effects than, say, the traditional chemotherapy or radiotherapy. People can just take the treatment for an hour before their office and go to the office. So they are like not facing anything like nausea and hair falling out and things like that. That's very minimal with these treatments.
And you mentioned, of course, that these rectal cancer patients are of a particular subset. But just because this drug worked for them, what hope does it have for other kinds of cancers?
So these PD-1 blockades are being used in many different types of cancers. It's used in lung cancers which have metastasized. It's used in some kind of breast cancers, squamous cell cancers. But what is important, and this is where oncology is now moving towards, is what we call precision medicine. So it would be like you look at your genetic profile and see, okay, these are the genes missing, and then you give a medicine for that gene and your body sort of fights off the cancer itself. So that is what oncologists think will be the future of cancer treatment rather than pumping your body with toxins. But that will take some time to happen. This is like advancement in the right direction.
And do we know what sort of next steps these researchers will take now? Will they essentially have to do bigger trials?
They will. This is a phase 2 trial, if I'm not wrong, for the drug in rectal cancer patients. This drug is already approved for treatment of endometrial cancers in US and European Union. I mean, they would still have to do a bigger trial for rectal cancer using this therapy. And I think they must be doing it because clearly they have more people recruited than the number of patients that they have published. So they would be doing that.
And what does a drug like this mean for a country like India, which has a lot of cancer patients, but the money they can spend on a treatment is considerably less compared to people in the West?
Right. So that is one of the biggest challenges to using this drug in India. In fact, Dr. P.K. Julka, who was a radiotherapy professor at AIIMS and now is working in a private setup, he told me he was one of the first to do the treatment in India at AIIMS. And the only patients he could give this therapy to were people who were covered by, say, CGHS. So you have to give this therapy only and only to people who have some sort of, health safety net because it is very expensive. It costs about rupees 4 lakhs a month and patients might need to take it for 6 months to a year. So that kind of adds up. It's a lot of money and there are some people who can afford it, but I mean, it can't become the standard of care, so to say, in India.
And in the end, we talk about a forensic analysis test. Recently, a special court in Mumbai gave a 44-year-old the death sentence for the rape and murder of a woman in the Sakinaka area of the city. And among the evidence that the court relied on was a Gait analysis report. Gait as in Gait, meaning the manner in which someone walks or moves on foot. The prosecution relied on CCTV footage and compared that with the sample video of the way the accused walked. This was the first time in Maharashtra that the test was relied on by a court in a criminal trial. In this segment, Indian Express's Sadaf Modak joins us to talk about this relatively new form of forensic analysis. Sadaf, for those who might be hearing about this for the first time, could you explain what Gait analysis is?
So in the medical field, the Gait analysis is used by experts to find the source of an injury, to find the source of a pain. And just by the manner in which a person walks or a person stands. This also has been used by physiotherapists for treatment and even in purposes of training of athletes so that they can perform better. Now, this has been borrowed by the forensic sciences and the same analysis is used to identify suspects in criminal cases. In cases where, say, for instance, other markers of identification are not available, for instance, a fingerprint or a DNA or the face of a person is not visible. What the experts do is that they usually then identify a person on the basis of how he or she is walking. This usually is used in cases where there's CCTV footage of a suspect, and with advent of CCTV cameras in across metropolitan cities, for instance, Mumbai itself has some 3 lakh CCTV cameras set up by the Mumbai police. And apart from that, there would obviously be CCTV cameras put up by private institutions and homes, shops. So, this has become like a major source of evidence. And the Gait analysis is used in identification of an individual based on the CCTV footage that has captured them near the spot of the incident or, in some other space and to corroborate where they were at a particular point.
And what all does this analysis involve? As in, how do they ensure that the suspect is the same person they can see in a CCTV footage?
Right. So what they actually do is that they, for instance, based on the CCTV footage and the particular manner in which the suspect is walking, and if a suspect is arrested, they make that person walk exactly like how he's walked in the video. And they have to ensure that the camera angle of the sample video is the same as the CCTV footage. The lighting is the same, other conditions, including the height at which the camera is perched. All of that has to be sort of similar so that there is greater reliability and less errors in the analysis. And what they do is then they compare the CCTV footage along with the sample video by putting it in a software as well as sort of looking at it manually by in a slow motion video or by putting it, next to each other frame by frame. and then making calculations based on, say, like the stride of the person, or a gait cycle, which would be like when we put one foot on the ground and then when we put the same foot on the ground again, that would be called like a gait cycle. So these are the parameters with which they compare the CCTV footage as well as the sample video.
And Sadaf, how often is the gait analysis used in such cases?
So in India, it has been used a few times. This probably is the first case in Maharashtra where it has been admitted as evidence before a court. Last year, when the National Investigating Agency had arrested Sachin Vaze, the dismissed Mumbai police officer, there was a CCTV footage outside the residence of industrialist Mukesh Ambani where the police alleged that Vaze had parked an SUV and planted gelatin sticks in it. So in that case, they had found a CCTV footage where a man whose face couldn't visibly be seen was seen walking in a very loose white kurta, and they had made Vaze go through a gait analysis, sort of made him walk in a particular manner so that the comparison could be done with the CCTV footage to corroborate that it was him, in fact, who had gone to the spot. The forensic report of that analysis is not out yet, but similarly, the tests have also been conducted in a murder case in Tamil Nadu, then in a murder case of journalist Gauri Lankesh in Bangalore in 2017, and one other rape case in Surat in 2018. But it is not a very common tool, also because it is almost like a developing science, and there is still a lot of apprehension about how accurate it is by itself. So those are the concerns that are still not completely addressed. Also, the one's gait may not be qualified as unique as, say, a fingerprint, but they claim that they are attempting to make it more and more error-free by introducing different ways in which the gait test can be made more reliable. Like I said, in terms of ensuring that there is a lot of measurements in what the stride length is, what the gait cycle is like. But like I said, this is still evolving. So at least at this stage cannot be considered as a standalone evidence to identify an accused.
And so in the Sakinaka murder and rape case, how was the gait analysis used?
So in this case as well, the incident had taken place in this area called Sakinaka, and police had found CCTV footage of near the spot where they said that the accused could be seen. And there was a few other CCTV cameras in the area where they again saw a suspect who looked like the person who was near the spot of the incident. So they had to corroborate him. It was the same person, but the face of the accused wasn't very clearly visible near the spot of the incident. So they made him undergo the gait test where they made him walk in the similar manner. But the problem was, again, the expert who deposed said that there were certain comparative features which they could not extract because of conditions like night vision and distance and height of the camera. So that is what was used in the case. In fact, here one could say that the court did not completely rely on the gait analysis as the only way of identifying the accused. In fact, it was used only as a corroborative tool because there were other CCTV footages available. There were eyewitnesses available who had seen the accused. So they also used this analysis to sort of corroborate already available evidence. It was not used as a primary and the only evidence to identify the accused.
You were listening to Three Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was written and produced by me, Shashank Bhargava, and was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it, share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can tweet us at Express Podcasts and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.